14.2 Sense Organs. Please make sure that you go back to the objectives after you're done studying and make sure that you can fulfill them. Sense organ. What's a sense organ? Simply, it's a group of receptor cells. Receptor cells, as we learned before in the nervous system, can receive stimuli. So, after they receive stimuli, they send the information through the sensory nerves, if you remember from the last lesson. What about after they receive the stimulus? They send it to the brain through the sensory nerves. Remember? So, again, a group of receptor cells. But are all receptor cells the same? No. A sense organ is a group of receptor cells that are able to respond to a specific stimulus. What do I mean by this? I mean that some sense organs can detect some specific stimuli. Like what? Like your eye. Your eye can detect only the light stimuli. What about your ears? Your ears, it is a sense organ that can detect the sound stimuli. What about your skin? Your skin, it has nerve endings that can detect pressure or touch. So each sense organ can detect a specific stimulus and it can respond to it. What do I mean by respond? Is it the effector organ now? No. But respond means that it can respond to this stimulus specifically. Like if you put light into your ear, can it respond to light? Can it deliver the messages coming out of this light? Of course not. So this means that it can respond to the stimulus, which means that it can send the information that comes from the stimulus. But if it's not adapted to receive the stimulus, it will not be able to send the information. So, to sum it up, a sense organ is a group of receptor cells that are able to respond to a specific stimulus. And here's the example, the human eye or the eye in animals. So this is the diagram of the eye. Please study it carefully. Let's take a look into the eye. So the eye is filled with fluid. Does this mean that it's soft or hard? Of course it's very soft. And since it's a soft, important organ, this means that it has to be protected. So that's why it's protected by this orbit inside the skull, or we can say this concave part into the skull that will protect it as if the eye is sitting into a cave. So it helps protect it and keep its shape. And what about the front part of the eye? The front part of the eye is protected with the conjunctiva. So the conjunctiva is simply like a layer that will protect the eye from any foreign bodies, dust, or any bacteria. It's protecting the eye like when you put a very valuable paper into a file. You're protecting it from getting any dust or from getting damaged, okay? So it protects all the parts of the eye that are behind it. The eye is always moist. If the eye gets dry, it will turn itchy and it might not see well because it's totally filled with fluid. So that's why it needs to be always wet. What keeps it wet? The tear glands. So the tear glands produce tears that leave the tear gland through the tear duct and keep your eye always wet. Also, a very important function of the tears is that they have the lysozyme enzyme that kills the bacteria. So it is a chemical barrier. Remember the chemical barriers from before? Okay, and other parts of our eye. Let's take a look at the eye. First, we have the iris. It is the colored part of the eye. Can you see? This is the iris. It's made of muscles, or it contains muscles that can change the size of the pupil. Where's the pupil? It is this dark part in the middle. Simply, it's a hole that will allow the light to go into the eye. So here you go. This is the iris. It is the colored part, and it's made of muscles that can open or close, or they can alter or change the size of the pupil. So when there is low intensity of light, when the light is dim, what does the iris do? It pulls back. Why? To widen the pupil in order to gather as much light as you can for you to see, to improve your vision. What about high intensity light or very bright light? What will happen then? In high intensity light, the iris closes in. What does close in mean? It increases in size. So when it increases in size, what will decrease in size? Exactly, the pupil. So the pupil will become smaller. Why? To protect the retina, because too much light can damage the retina. And then you can see here the lens and the cornea. The cornea simply refracts or bends light. So can you see here the light is coming in straight line. But I need to bend this light and focus it onto the retina, just like a camera, in order to see. So the cornea here bends the light to make sure that it will fit into the lens to be focused onto the retina. So accordingly, what's the function of the lens? The lens does the fine adjustment, just like any camera lens. It makes the fine adjustment and focuses the light ray onto the retina. Now let's look at the retina. The retina is the part of the eye that contains the actual receptor cells here. What do we call those receptor cells? They are called rods and cones. So since they are in the eye, so simply they are receptor cells that respond and are sensitive to light. So they send the electrical impulses through the optical nerve. Again, so what senses light? The receptor cells that we call rods and cones. Who delivers the message to the brain? The optic nerve. Okay. Where does the optic nerve get attached to the retina? Here, in this specific part. We call this part the blind spot. Why is it a blind spot? Because it does not contain any receptor cells. It's simply just the attachment point of the optic nerve. But it does not have receptor cells. It has no rods and cones. So, what do the rods and cones look like? Here you go. These are the rods and these are the cones. Why do we have two types of receptor cells? Because each one of them has a function. So the rods, they respond to dim light and black and white colors. What about cones? Cones simply are receptor cells that respond to different colors and also bright light. Okay, let's answer some questions. Which labeled part of the eye contains muscles? The one that contains muscles is the iris. Remember, which label is the iris? Yes, it is C. What about D? It is the cornea. Why can't I say conjunctiva? Because if you take a deeper look here, you will see that the arrow is pointing, or the line is pointing here, not on the outer area. Actually, this must be the cornea. So, the cornea, what was the function of the cornea again? It was to bend light. What about A? A is the retina. What about B? B is the optic nerve. Okay, let's take a look here. The diagram shows the appearance of the iris and the pupil in three different light conditions. So you have 1, 2, and 3. These are different light conditions and the response of the iris to each one of them. So which row shows the size of the pupil of the eye in each light condition? If you look here, this is bright or no light or moderate light. Now I have my iris pulling away and the pupil at its widest. So this means that if the three options are no light, moderate light, and bright light, this must be the no light. So no light 1, 1. So I'm looking at A and B. So now let's take a look between those two. 2 is definitely much narrower than 3. So this means that this must be the bright light and this must be the moderate light. So the choice is B. Okay? Now, let's go to paper 3 questions. Figure 5.1 shows a section through the human eye. Can you see? Name the structures A, B, C, and D. So A is going to be the iris, and B, it is the hole in the middle of the iris we call the pupil, and C, the cornea, and D, the retina. State the function of E. So what's E again? E is the optic nerve. So what does it do? Carries nerve impulses to the brain. Give one reason why X area is a blind spot. We said that it is the place where the optic nerve attaches to the retina. But is this why it does not have any vision? No, it's a blind spot because it does not have any receptor cells or no rods and cones. Accordingly, it can't detect any light. Thank you, and I hope this video helps you study.